What's up, queens? Welcome to the Female Dating Strategy Podcast, the meanest female-only podcast on the internet. I'm Ro.
And I'm Savannah.
And we've made it
to the end of 2022!
Can you believe it?
It's gone so quick. Wow. It feels like a lot has happened, but nothing has happened this year.
Everything and nothing happened at once.
Yeah. I think it's that first proper, post-COVID year where life is starting to get returned to normal for most people. That was just a bit, 22 is a bit but...
And some of us are stumbling through life confused as fuck, which we're going to talk about in this week's episode, which is the 2022 best of and worst of.
The best of and worst of. To be fair, this year was genuinely, it was hard to pick a winner for each category, which again goes back to what I said. It feels like everything and nothing happened this year.
So many lowlights to choose from. Really, just a lot of people out here embarrassing themselves.
Legit, straight up. So, introducing the first category, we have the Pick Me Hall of Shame. This was a crowded category, to be fair.
This is a crowded category, right? So let's read off the nominees.
Alexandra Hunt, who was a congressional candidate that basically said that men should have a right to sex in the most pick-me way possible as well.
We did a whole episode on her.
We have the millennial BDSM kink mishas who are going around shaming particularly young women for not being into BDSM and finding it abusive and basically calling out all the issues with it. You see these people, primarily they hang out on Twitter because I think that Gen Z, is it Gen Z, like the younger generation?
Yeah, Gen Z.
Yeah, Gen Z TikTok is generally quite base. Like the younger women are really, they're being very critical of the narrative surrounding sex. And they're getting a lot of pushback from millennials who don't like the fact that they are exercising their judgment and critical thinking skills in relation to sex. We've got Chris Evans fans who were devastated that he didn't tell them that he was in a relationship.
Yeah, they wrote an open letter and started harassing everybody. We did this in our bonus content about Chris Evans fans.
Yeah, that was wild, to be fair.
And apparently they felt like they were covering for him because he had some unsavory behavior with interns, allegedly. So they were creating campaigns to defend him. So I'm like, yeah, you just took a horrible L there because he's going to keep dating people and not telling you. Like, he's clearly not going to be honest to you in the public, but yeah.
Yeah. And then we had the Deptford wives. These were the women who were defending Johnny Depp during the trial earlier this year. And so, do you want to announce the winner, Ro?
All right.
The winner is...
Drum roll, please. Deptford wives. I feel like there was no contest here. They were the biggest pick-me's all year.
It had to be the Deptford wives. And there are a number of reasons why. Like, the first one is just the damaging narratives that were coming out of their mouths. I know that there were so many professionals who work with abused women who were just coming out with the most victim-blaming stuff. And the worst part is that, they were defending actions that they themselves had been through. And some of them were then actually subjected to the same victim blaming that they were dishing out to Amber Heard. So it was like, don't believe Amber, even though she had a lot more evidence than, most victims would have. And her stories, they were corroborated and consistent from the start of their relationship. But then, there was a prominent Deptford wife who came out and said that this guy abused me. And then she was basically met with all the victim blaming vitriol that she'd been dishing out to Amber. And she still somehow managed to blame Amber Heard for it. She was saying, this is why it's Amber Heard's fault that I'm not being believed. I'm like, no, you're not being believed because you're spreading the damaging victim blaming narratives.
So we're dealing with smooth brains here because I wish I had sympathy for them, but I don't. These have to be the most insane group of women we've encountered in quite some time. Like, they were showing up outside the courthouse. They were throwing things at Amber Heard. They were obsessively boycotting or writing a bunch of letters to the makeup company of the makeup that Amber said she used.
They were slandering judges who had ruled against Johnny Depp, making up really, really easily disproven lies about them. The funniest thing is when they all crowdfunded like $3,000 to get documents unsealed, and it came out that Johnny Depp is like a walking STI, STD, HPV flag.
Yeah. They spent thousands of dollars of their own money to unseal some court records from Johnny Depp, only to find out that everything that Amber Heard said was likely true. That he's abusive, he's a drunk, he's on drugs, he's full of
ED.
STDs, he's got erectile dysfunction, and he's a pathological liar. So L upon L upon L. So Deptford Wives, you won this category in a landslide.
And we have to give a special mention to Alexandra Hunt because her thread was just unhinged, but luckily she did not get anywhere near like the halls of power.
The level of delusion either of Deptford Wives, right? Alexandra Hunt's pretty delusional, but I feel like the entire internet descended upon her to correct her very faulty idea. Deptford Wives had like international support. And what's wild about it is like some of these women who came forward and were trying to meet with Johnny Depp, and you can just see, I'm like, he's not gonna fuck you, sis. You know what I mean? Like you can see a lot of them were just like older women who had a crush on him. I'm like, he's clearly dedicated to dating much younger women. So you're doing all this work to defend a man who wouldn't piss on you if we're on fire.
And he would probably actively insult you and call you fat because a lot of these women, you know, they're not Amber Heard, so to speak, and look at the way he treated and spoke about her.
Exactly. So just pathetic all around. Be ashamed of yourselves. Deptford Wives are our 2022 winners of the Pick Me Hall of Shame.
Pick Me Hall of Shame. Well deserved.
What's the opposite of a round of applause? That's what I want to give it. Boo. Yeah.
You need to like pipe that in.
A chorus of boos, tomatoes and cabbages.
Boo. So the next category is the Scrotes Mad category. Again, this one is kind of like tricky because you could literally have thousands of entries.
When aren't they mad is the question.
Yeah, and I'm starting to see as the general conversation around gender dynamics, heterosexual relationships are starting to shift to be more FDS aligned. Like they're just becoming more and more pissed about, you know, women and their standards and what they're saying about them. But here we've just picked out a few memorable ones. So the first one is the hate that women who work white collar jobs get. So this one came about because on TikTok, there's been a few female TikTokers who have basically documented their daily life. So they're living in a nice city, they have a nice apartment, and they're just walking people through like, this is where I work, which is usually a really, really nice building. It's got all sorts of perks. They're working in tech most often. And the comments from men are just so salty. It's ridiculous.
They're very, very angry at women having employment.
Having employment and being paid well and who are in good jobs. They have a massive problem with that.
The thing about it is they might not even be paid well. The men are just mad because of the perceived class privilege. And I'm like, there was nothing stopping you from going to college and not fucking around at school and getting that job if you wanted to, except for like your grades, your patience, your ability to work well with others, the ability to dress professionally, speak to people with intelligence, interact with people in a productive way, your ability to start a project and see it through to completion, your ability to read and write, do math. Let's keep going, right? Like they're really mad because they feel like these women have easy jobs, but even though these jobs are supposedly easy, they can't get them.
Yeah. And they clearly have a certain way of life as well. So these women are, you know, living in nice places. They have a nice routine. Yeah, good for them.
It's really like pathetic because of it really ramped up when Elon Musk bought Twitter, right? And then they were all celebrating and rejoicing that a lot of the women they felt didn't deserve jobs in tech were going to be kicked out for, I guess, greasy, bad-built men with no social skills who can just sit down and code all day. Because that's what it takes to run a company, according to Scrotes. So that's the first nominee of what Scrotes were mad about this year.
Off the back of that, I actually snuck in a additional entry. So this was the rise of lonely men and the reaction from men when people tried to suggest go outside, make friends, volunteer, do something for your community. And they just hated that. Absolutely hated that.
Yeah, Scrotes were mad at suggestions to improve their lives all year. Basic suggestions to improve their lives, like wash their ass, Brush their teeth.
Go outside.
Go outside. Breathe fresh air. Don't watch porn all the time. Watch less porn. Things that just help a normal individual become healthy, happy, and productive. They were very upset that people suggested that they not do those things.
That people dared to suggest it. And just generally, that the way that they were angry that women weren't really, at least on Twitter anyway, that women, they weren't prepared to shoulder the burden of trying to sort out lonely men, which is what these men want. They were mad at that too. So the next entry is when the Scrotes were mad at a young woman not wanting to date older men. So this came about, it was a viral tweet from a 22-year-old woman on Twitter who said that men over the age of 25 are basically old and washed out, and she's got nothing to say to them because they're too old for her. And men in their 30s and 40s were pissed at that, basically.
Yeah, the Scrotes are mad at women not wanting to date men significantly older than them, so...
Yeah, and then the final one is again, this sort of like links back to the millennial BDSM, Scrotes and kink niches, is the rise of, I guess, the backlash.
Men mad that Gen Z women don't like their porn-addicted BDSM abusive sex. When Gen Z women set a boundary that they were tired of older men who wanted to be their, quote, daddy dom hitting on them, these Scrotes had a fucking meltdown on Twitter, which we talked about in our bonus content.
Like, to the point of, like, calling them conservative, calling them backwards, saying they're not progressive, even though being progressive doesn't always mean, not all progress is good progress, so to speak. But yeah, they were really, really mad at that.
All right, so who's the winner of our Scrotes Mad category for 2022? It is lonely ass men. Die mad, Scrotes. Been mad all year and taking zero of our suggestions about how to improve yourself.
And just taking no responsibility. And, loneliness isn't just something that affects men as well. It also affects women, but it seems like women seem to either accept it or they will create spaces where they can meet other women and bond with them on a deep level. Men don't want to do this with each other. And it's just I think for me, the reason why they win this category by far is that they're mad at something that is, for the most part within their control to fix, and for something that is their responsibility. Like, society doesn't owe you a relationship. It doesn't owe you friends. You have to go out and seek those and develop and nurture them. That's the way it works.
Yeah, and it's been interesting because, the media has done a lot of coddling in the past of men like this, being like, we have to figure out what's going on with them psychologically. And I am seeing a slight turn towards fuck these guys, like they're just assholes from the media, because they're realizing that a lot of these men are just lame and entitled and they're not victims. So meaning even the men who are lonely and then go on like a shooting spree or complain there or do something like, that causes harm to others because they're lonely, it's their fault, right? And no one cares. It's like, here's all the things you need to do to improve that, and they want to do zero of it. So, die mad, like I said.
Cool.
What's our next category?
We have the male depravity category. Again, a crowded field.
This is where we took our fisher's net and then just really dragged the bottom of the ocean floor here to pick up all the rest of the gunk, the human gunk.
And basically re-traumatized ourselves in the process. So the nominees for this category are...
Number 1, the cum tub guy.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so the cum tub guy was the guy we did in our Thanksgiving roaster scrote. If you want to go back and listen to that one, it's the man who had the rice purity score and was just probably the most singular, disgusting human, just physically, mentally, socially, everything that I think we've gotten on our roasted scrotes thus far.
Yeah, that was grim.
I mean, there was just 100% 360 disgusting scrote. And like the cum tub story was... Actually, I won't reveal the cum tub story. Go ahead and listen to that episode because it's pretty gross.
Yeah. And that comes with its own trigger warning. In fact, this whole section, comes with a massive trigger warning, by the way. The next nominee is the murder kink. So this one came from a popular BDSM subreddit where a woman was rightfully concerned that the man she had just married had been sexting another woman, cheating, red flag number 1. And in those sex, he was talking about how he planned to basically massively violate her and kill her as a kink. People in the comments then piped up that having a murder kink is totally normal and it doesn't mean that the person is actually going to kill anybody. I'm personally not willing to take that risk, so I actually reported this post and the people in it to the FBI. Whether or not the FBI have actually done anything about it, I don't know. But this is how serial killer stories start, like legit. Like, it is not normal to sexually get off to killing people. And I just had to put that in there because I'm just like, if it's got to be like the ultimate depraved fantasy is murder, like that's the end game, right?
And you were talking about this on your Twitter quite a bit. So at Savannah_FDS.
Yeah, so we'll pop the link to the stories and the depravity for you to peruse at your leisure. But yeah, again, trigger warning, because that shit just massively disturbed me.
So FYI, all of our nominees are from anywhere in the FDS universe that we've talked about this year. So between our Twitter accounts, the Instagram, the website, the Reddit, what else? Discord, the Patreon, etc. So this is the FDS universe.
So the next nominee is a scrote who called the police on a woman he went to work with. Ro, did you want to explain this one?
Okay, so this is the video that went viral of the man who went to the police station to report the father of a woman that he had been harassing, that he'd been trying to play her a song that he likes, and she kept running away from him. And so he goes to the police station and says, I'm here to report harassment because the girl's dad called him and said, if you come near my daughter again, I'm going to kill you, And then the police basically looked at him like, oh, sounds like you're the problem because you're quite literally stalking her down. And then he says like, no, I think she's the problem because I'm just trying to show her my song. And I feel like her father is threatening me and it's a violation of my rights. And then he goes on a manifesto right after that, after he leaves the police station, and talks about how there's a woke agenda to turn her into a lesbian. So like she's already a lesbian. So basically it's this like really creepy man. So this was blowing up on pretty much all of media because everybody was like, what the actual fuck? And even the cops who are not known for being particularly sensitive on domestic violence issues looked at this guy like he was fully crazy. So collective what the fuck for that guy.
Yeah, what the fuck? Like, oh.
Incel, yeah.
Next we have the sex offender who Vice tried to humanize.
So this is like another mic drop moment in the media's failure to convince me in particular that sex offenders can be rehabilitated, even though they keep trying for reasons unknown. So Vice did a documentary about the lives of sex offenders who leave prison, who have to register and try to reintegrate into society. And they tried to make it seem like a very sympathetic documentary. And then at the end, they revealed that this guy sent them a bunch of dick pics. So they tried to make it a very sympathetic story.
He basically demonstrated why he should have no sympathy for these fuckers.
Yeah. So Vice created a documentary centered around men who were leaving prison for sex offenses. And what they did is they documented how hard it was for them to find a place to live and how to get a job and how hopeful they were for their future. So at the conclusion of the documentary, this guy is like, I have all the hopes for my futures. I feel like society doesn't want me to get back reintegrated into society. And at the end of it, Vice does a mic drop moment where they revealed that the men actually sent them dick pictures. So it's like they keep trying to humanize these men who are sex offenders, and he just turns out to be a disgusting scrote like the rest of them.
And proves why they should stop being so sympathetic towards them. So the final entry is the pedo PhD. So this one refers to a PhD student who is currently studying at the University of Manchester called Carl Anderson, who spent 3 months recording his thoughts and feelings as he was masturbating over images of young boys in Japanese comic books. So that was his research study. Ro and I did a bonus content on this. And in the show notes, there are 3 articles that just go from like bad to extremely disturbing, like lock him up, bad. So that's who the pedo PhD is.
Listen to that episode because basically his dissertation was only scratching the surface of his depravity. Like he has evidence of him sexualizing young boys dating back 10 years. So we were sitting there wondering how he even got into college in the first place, given that all this is public.
Yeah. So the winner, anyway, of
drumroll,
a Male Depravity 2022 is
pedo PhD, hands down, disturbing individual.
Has to be. And the thing that is doubly disturbing is how many people must have known. Like he's got a PhD supervisor. the research study that involved him masturbating to images of young boys had to go through a ethics committee. It had to go to an editorial board who published it, but they took it down due to backlash. The University of Manchester must have known about his paedophilic tendencies, and that's what's doubly disturbing about it. But it's also representative of a growing movement that is trying to reframe paedophilia as another sexual orientation, so minor attracted persons as well.
Yeah, absolutely disgusting, Scrote. Check out the bonus content we did on that, and you'll be 100% convinced he should have won. On patreon.com/the female dating strategy. Okay, so our next category, queen shit moment.
Queen shit.
So these are all the queeniest moments of the year. First one being women overtaking men in college enrollment.
So this basically goes back to a statistic that says that more women are enrolled in college and are more likely to graduate than men. And once again, men or society have tried to frame that as a massive problem that is damaging to society, as opposed to thinking, well, maybe men are just not wanting to go to college, or maybe they're just lazy, or they're just not getting in, or women are just better.
Yeah, we're just better. They just need to accept that. Boys go to Jupiter to get more stupider. Girls go to college to get more knowledge. The prophecy foretold.
Yeah. And it's interesting that, education was literally basically built and designed by men, and they've not had a problem with it. The only time they have a problem with it is when they're literally being beaten at their own game. That's when they realize it's not fair.
We have fulfilled the prophecy, ladies. Next queen shit moment, Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Being nominated to the Supreme Court.
Yes. Being the first Black woman on the Supreme Court is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. So basically, they're there till they're dead. They don't retire.
They can retire. Plenty do retire before they die. Most of them retire before they die, but I think it's about 50-50. So.
Okay.
Sometimes they die in office, but that's a choice. They can retire. They can resign at any time.
So basically, do some of them do the strategic game? Because I know there were people who were saying that Ruth Bader Ginsburg should have resigned. Was it during Obama's term? So he could elect a new one?
Yeah, a lot of them, if they think they're going to retire, I mean, they're supposed to be nonpartisan, but
they must be partisan. It's not possible to be.
They're supposed to be nonpartisan. It's been more and more partisan, I think, in recent years, or blatantly partisan without a whole lot of pretense behind it. But it's kind of random when they retire. I think it's just when they get sick, or they just get tired of it, or they're older or whatever. Yeah, so she's on our queen shit moment. Our third queen shit is a combination of women who spoke out against abuse this year. So Amber Heard, Megan Thee Stallion, Constance Wu, and Jeanette McCurdy.
And they got so much hate and backlash as well.
Yeah.
I think it's good to make them a collective, because all of their experiences, whilst they're so different, the reaction has just been very, very similar. And it just goes to show that these women are really sticking their head above the parapet for speaking up. Especially speaking up about the abuse they were subjected to in the industries that they're in as well. Because that could literally be career ending for them. And, for some of them it will be.
Yeah, so entertainment stars who spoke out against abuse this year.
And even Britney as well can be added to that.
Yeah, Britney could also be in that category. Last category, the women of Iran. The women of Iran have completely and totally started a revolution. So the women of Iran have been protesting since around September of this year because of the murder of an Iranian woman named Mahsa Amini, who was killed in custody of the guidance patrol in Tehran due to police brutality because she was not wearing her hijab. So the police, of course, lied about how and why she died, but her body was discovered and it was quite battered. So the women of Iran decided to tear shit up. They've been doing a protest that's now been ongoing since then. So it's been ongoing for months at this point, demanding that the Iranian government, practically trying to overthrow the Islamic Republic, but definitely the morality police, and assert their right to be able to live in public without having to wear the hijab. So they are going ham right now against their government. And it's very brutal because there's been several women who have been abducted. They've died. They've been beaten by the morality police, been disappeared by the government. So they are extremely, extremely brave and fighting for their right to exist. So drumroll please, who won this queen shit moment? Women of Iran.
Has to be.
Not even close.
It has to be women of Iran. I think any women or any group of people who are brave enough to go up against an entire social order within their country, particularly a social order that is so hostile to them as a group, they have my deepest respect, because that's not an easy thing to do.
Yes. So kudos to the women of Iran. Very brave.
And we wish them all the success in the world. We hope that.
We wish them 100% success. And if there's anybody that's really plugged in to know what can be done on the Western end, that would be really great. Because right now there's been so much chaos that it's hard to figure out what's legitimate, what kind of initiatives people who aren't there physically can get behind. So let us know. Okay. Our next category is
male high value moments. So again, this category, as usual, can be quite slim pickings, actually. Out of all the categories, it's one of the hardest ones to do. Obviously, because we also know that it can be hard to judge whether a male is high value just by looking at them. So we do this category with the disclaimer that this is not meant to be a statement on the whole man, but just an individual action that we deem to be high value. So the first one is Lord Justice Andrew Nichol, and with an honorary shout out to Lord Justice Dingemans and Lord Justice Underhill. So even though this didn't happen this year, what they did came to prominence because of the Depp Heard trial. So Lord Justice Andrew Nichol was the judge who presided over the lawsuit between Johnny Depp and The Sun. And he ruled that majority of Amber's claims of abuse that were documented in The Sun were substantially true. The reason why I would say he was, high value in this ruling is because he clearly understood the impact DV has. So when Amber may not have had evidence, or when, sometimes, her testimony didn't make sense, as opposed to saying she must be lying, like, most people said in the trial this year, he acknowledged that that is a side effect of DV. And he sometimes gave her the benefit of the doubt, but he was also critical of her as well. And this year, he's just been absolutely slandered by jobless, ignorant Depp fans who were just making up the most ridiculous shit about him to discredit his judgment. But the judgment still stands, and in the UK, we can still legally call Johnny Depp a wife beater. The other two Lord Justices, they were the ones who heard Johnny Depp's appeal. So when Johnny Depp lost the original trial against The Sun, he went to the High Court to appeal, and they basically said Johnny Depp is wasting their time because they upheld the original judgment and they didn't see anything wrong with how Lord Justice Andrew Nichol conducted the trial, basically. So, when people say it was only Lord Justice Andrew Nichol, who ruled that Johnny Depp was a wife beater because his son was, he worked for the newspaper, which is a complete lie. They don't acknowledge the fact that two other independent judges actually supported his ruling as well. So there's that. The next one we have is Alexis Ohanian, who is the partner of Serena Williams and former owner of Reddit. Did you want to speak on this one, Ro? Because I don't know much about him.
Yeah. So we nominated him because we think that he's been consistently high value in defending his family as well as Serena from public attacks this year, specifically coming from people like Drake, who once again is there's the rumor that Drake and Serena used to date, so he's a particularly bitter ex, right? So he basically called out Alexis Ohanian a groupie, and Alexis said, I absolutely am a groupie for my wife and child, and I prioritize them, and basically made Drake seem like a lame, which is a pretty big feat, right? Because Drake is extremely popular, so Alexis Ohanian managed to change the narrative for his wife and not let her be publicly harassed by Scrotes by being unconditionally supportive and telling Drake basically that you're a dumbass and kind of pathetic and not really making moves out here. And he also supported her this year during her retirement. So that's also really important. She's making a really big life transition. So he's been out front and center supporting her desire to step away from tennis and letting her know, obviously he still loves her and helping her transition to that period. So that's the type of thing that a good supportive partner does. So we thought we would recognize that.
Yes. And then the last nominee in this category is the Iranian football team and men in Iran who are fighting against the Iranian public. So they were included because they went to the World Cup. They were knocked out, I think, in the group stages. But as a form of protest against what's been happening in Iran, they actually didn't sing the national anthem. And there's now growing concerns about their safety when they return to their country because a politician came out and said that we won't allow anybody to insult our anthem, basically saying they're going to have to sing it. And I think, especially because there has been a lot of controversy in general around Qatar and human rights, lots of football teams, and especially when they banned players from wearing the bands that showed support for LGBT plus people, the men in the Iranian football team, they actually took a very, very public stand, which was a lot more than other football teams were willing to do, in solidarity with the women back home as well.
So our 2022 winner, Iranian football team / all of the men who have stepped up to fight alongside the female protesters, right? Because now it's become bigger than just the hijab, but the hijab was obviously, and Mahsa Amini is obviously the person that kicked off the entire protest. But since then, like you can see that men have really gotten behind supporting women in this movement and also questioning a lot of the authoritarian aspects of the regime. So
yeah. And it's a tough crowd to do it on as well, because the protesters in Iran were actually cheering the English football team because they didn't want Iran to advance in the World Cup anyway. So they were...
Yeah. I mean, that's some gangster shit. Like, they're really fed up, right? So imagine just like the ripple effects of seeing that woman be brutalized because she wasn't wearing hijab, and then all of the men stepping up. I mean, there's lots of video online of the morality police trying to snatch up women, and then men running behind them and like punching the police in the face and stuff like that. So it's really intense there right now. And so seeing that there's a large amount of men who are willing to fall on the sword to make sure that women have the right to not be harassed and beat down by the police for not wearing hijab is inspiring. Once again, not a blanket statement on like all of their high valueness or anything, but that's certainly commendable. All right, so back to the fun shit.
I was gonna say this is
all the like depressing parts of like.
We're getting just into the straight up roast now. The FDS barbecue is ready and lit.
All right, so this is a category we invented this year. Biggest male humbling. Who got humbled the most? For whom did life humble that ass this year?
It's a tough crowd again.
Okay, so we're just going to go through the names. First one, Kanye. We didn't get to talk about Kanye on the pod, but we talked about him on Twitter. But obviously, literally everything that's happened to him since he decided to come out as a virulent anti-Semite and is clearly a porn-addicted Scrotes. It's come out that he was compulsively showing people porn that he was working with, kind of lost his mind. So he's been kicked out of just about every endorsement deal that he's had. So yeah, life's humbling the fuck out of him right now. He has a long history of being a Scrote. So obviously his divorce from Kim Kardashian and his like woe is me hating on Pete Davidson, just truly unhinged stuff that we don't even have time to go through all of it. But he's being humbled right now. So he's one nominee. The next one is Bartice from Love is Blind. Because this is a guy who thought he was hot shit.
He got humbled by Raven.
Got humbled by Raven, but really the entire internet. So right now he's being dragged to high hell because of his haircut and then thinking way too much of himself. So life is humbling the shit out of him right now. Nominee number 3.
Men on dating apps finding out they're ugly.
Yes. So there's been a collective awakening of men right now figuring out like, oh, women can swipe right only on attractive men and swipe left on ugly men. And there's been a number of think pieces and articles coming out talking about how men aren't getting matches and aren't getting swipes, and that they thought they were attractive before then. So life is humbling a lot of men right now on dating apps. So they're our third nominee.
The next one is Kevin Samuels.
Kevin Samuels. He's dead. So
this is going to make me sound like a bitch, but I do not give a shit. Like, when he dropped dead and everyone was like, you shouldn't wish death on people. I'm like, I didn't wish him to die when he was alive, but now he's dead. I'm not going to be sad about it. Like, he was a dick and he was a misogynist, very, very anti-black, like very, very anti-woman. Like, I'm not going to be sad about it. And the worst part, well, the humbling part was he allegedly died the same way he said the average black woman would die anyway.
He died alone in a hotel of hypertension because all he did was drink Red Bulls underneath a large overweight woman that he says is allegedly low value. So life humbled his ass. He died in probably the most embarrassing way possible, of a heart attack.
It wouldn't have been embarrassing if he hadn't have been saying that, women he found undesirable would die that way. Like, it just wouldn't have been, like, people die in those sorts of circumstances, but it's just the way that he said that other women would die that way. It's perfect karma.
And alienated from his entire family, so.
Another thing as well is, like, nobody really knew for, like, several days. Like, it had to be, like, when it came on Twitter, and it had to be confirmed over several days that he'd actually died. Like, this goes to show that no one in that man's life really gave a shit about him.
Yeah, and not to mention he was broken in debt and had no money to his name until he started to blow up, even just this past year. So he just got the money this past year. Even when he had his YouTube channel, he was pretty relatively unknown. Yeah, no, he had a ton of debt and apparently had zero money, that he only started paying off his debt in the past year because he started getting endorsements and some noticing from mainstream media. Like, he was on a couple different podcasts, and BET did a shout out to him in Memoriam, which no comment right now, but we'll put a pin in that. So Kevin Samuels, dead as fuck, and life did the ultimate humbling on him. So number 5 nominee?
Boris Johnson getting kicked out by his party and his failed comeback. So this all went down this summer when Boris Johnson was finally removed from power. And the straw that broke the camel's back after things like Partygate, where he was fined for breaking his own lockdown rules, general incompetence. But the straw that broke the camel's back was that he appointed somebody to basically be as deputy chief whip. I believe his name was Chris Pincher, a deputy chief whip. I'm not sure the American equivalent. It's like the whips of the party are the people who keep the party members in line, so tell them how to vote. I'm not sure what the American equivalent is. I guess it would maybe be like a speaker, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Speaker. Actually, maybe speakers and parts. Anyway, so it was quite a senior position, and Boris knew that Chris Pincher had allegations of sexual assault that were made against him and appointed him anyway. So when the story broke, I think it was about 70 cabinet ministers out of like 169, they resigned. So the current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, he was the Chancellor at the time, and he basically went first. And then over like the week, that like resignations were coming out every hour, to the point where if your cabinet, if your Chancellor goes, if your Health Secretary goes, like then your political career as Prime Minister is untenable. And Boris tried to hang on for dear life, but his support within the party basically collapsed. And what was really humbling about it was that that was exactly what he did to Theresa May, the previous Prime Minister. He engineered it so he would get her kicked out in the same way. And then less than 3 years later, it happened to him. His failed comeback, it came about as a result of the recent leadership contest. So after Boris resigned in summer, Liz Truss was elected Prime Minister. She lasted like 45 days and then she had to resign the same way. So the way the Tory party leadership election works is that each candidate has to secure at least 100 votes from all the MPs in the party. So they need to get 100 MPs, at least 100 MPs to vote for them before they make it onto the ballot, which then goes to the party membership. So when the news came out that Liz Truss had resigned, Boris was on holiday somewhere, I think the Caribbean. He comes racing back because he thinks that, yeah, I can come back. Like, this is my chance to...
It's my time to shine.
This is my time to shine. And there were idiot MPs in the party basically bigging him up, saying, welcome back, boss. We need you and all that jazz. So he came back on the Friday, and the deadline to get the 100 MP threshold is Monday. So then on the Monday, it became apparent that he hadn't got the 100 MPs needed to get on the ballot. And neither did the other candidate, Penny Mordaunt, which is why Rishi Sunak won by default, because he got the most MPs to back him. So, but Boris framed it like, I've decided to step back. But the reality is he didn't get the numbers to get on the ballot. So his comeback was a failure. So yeah, that was a humbling moment for Boris. Kicked out by the same way he used to get Cameron and Theresa May removed, and his comeback was a complete failure.
Next one, Ned from Try Guys cheated on his wife, and the entire crew kicked him out. So you guys are Try Guys fans. And then I want to do honorable mention to Alex Jones, who got a almost $1 billion verdict against him.
How is he going to pay that?
He can't. Like, he was already, first of all, he's been deplatformed pretty much everywhere. But in addition to that, he owes his ex-wife a lot of money and also former employees. So he's broke as a joke. He has no money. he's probably just going to declare bankruptcy and hopefully fade into obscurity. So Alex Jones got humbled to the tune of $1 billion this year. That's why he's desperately trying to hang on to any type of attention or relevancy to keep getting money because of the judgment against him on behalf of the Sandy Hook victims, for whom he incited a bunch of violence against and basically said they were faking their grief, which is insane on so many levels. So, all right. So the winner of this category,
drum roll,
is Kevin Samuels. Can't get any more humbled than dead.
Yeah.
Can't get any more humbled than dead.
Ultimate L. Ultimate
life L. So L, it's a D, as in death. As in you're dead as fuck, so.
He's dead. Dead.
The rest of these guys have years for a redemption arc, although we are hoping that it never comes to fruition because...
It never comes to them.
Yeah. But yeah, it's over for him. Game over. Pack it up. Take your ball and go home.
Game over.
All right, so our next category... This is actually our final nomination category. All right, so for this last category, we're going to call it the biggest clown show in the circus. Yeah. Who was an absolute fucking fool this year?
Again, crowded field.
Crowded field of nominees here. So we're just going to run through the names. Nick Cannon for having 11 babies and not taking care of none of them. And honorable mention to his girlfriend who won't even ask him for a nanny or can't even ask him for a nanny, for him not throwing checks her way to take care of a nanny.
Has he got no money?
He's got money. I think he might not have any now because he has 11 kids, but he should have enough to pay for a nanny and childcare. So second nominee, Elon Musk, for literally everything, like dropping some random twins off this year with a woman he worked with, taking over Twitter, becoming like this massive right-wing troll.
For doing 50-50 with Grimes, even though he's a literal billionaire.
So having to buy Twitter at a massive loss to himself.
The guy's a danger to himself.
Yeah, danger to himself. It's a pretty intense L because like you just can't, like you're addicted to trolling people on Twitter. Number 3, Johnny Depp. It's like, where do we start with him?
Oh, for looking like a washed up corpse with no talent. Having his, well, this is technically wasn't his fault, but having his fans expose his ED, STI riddled, HPV, basically a walking, safe sex like flag for the fact that he's looking more and more like a corpse each day. The fact that he tried to launch a music career alongside Jeff Beck. It was a total failure because he can't sing. Yeah. And I think the biggest harm on Johnny Depp is that if he had taken The Sun to court all those years ago, nobody would have really, because no one takes The Sun that seriously anyway, but he sort of took them on and got exposed in the process. So yeah, clown.
So next nominee, 40-year-old Neat. That was from our bonus content. A man who wrote a cautionary tale about his life. You have to check out that bonus content, but essentially, like, he just didn't do anything whatsoever with his life for 40 years. So his tale of woe is quite interesting. Basically, he thought he was like a secret genius with no evidence and thought someday his life was just going to magically work out without him having to put out effort. So absolute clown, 40-year-old Neat from our bonus content. Next one is Kanye again. Kanye deserves to be on there, be on here twice. It's like, there's so much Kanye news. The fight with the apparel companies, the divorce with Kim Kardashian, the wild, insane anti-Semitism. He's out here looking crazy as fuck every day. Every day the man looks crazier than the day before. So absolute clown. Just a cavalcade of public embarrassment. This is a man who I almost think has an embarrassment fetish. Like, then he went on Twitter and started talking about how all the women or all the men that Kim had sex with in their marriage, including NBA star Chris Paul, just like dragging everybody else's name through the mess. He's been like spilling tea on Twitter and Instagram. He said that like ASAP Rocky cheated on Rihanna. Like, just straight up every day is a different piece of drama with Kanye. And he has no shame and no sense of embarrassment to shut his fucking mouth. So he's also one of our nominees for biggest clown in the circus. We had honorable mention runner-ups, Adam Levine, Ezra Miller, Alex Jones for their bullshit this year. So,
and the winner,
Elon Musk.
Has to be. He took an L to the tune of like $45 billion and then just kept taking L's with how we treated the workforce. Like, when they all walked out, he's there begging them to come back. Clown.
Trying to get people to pay $8 for Twitter. It's still not going to be enough to recoup his loss. And it's pretty embarrassing right now to the extent that he's trying to put on a public brave face when he's clearly losing money. That's partially why he had to fire everybody, because he way overpaid for Twitter, can't really afford it, had to take a loan, and is probably not going to recoup his money back on there because advertisers are leaving. And yeah, so he's especially a big ass clown. Okay, so we have a couple of in memoriams for this year. One of them is Chris Rock's jaw for Will Smith slapping the taste out of his mouth.
And his pride as well.
Yeah, and his pride. So in memoriam to Chris Rock's pride and lower jaw half. Also Roe v. Wade. So we didn't know quite where to put this, but it feels weird to not talk about it on the worst of this episode. So Roe v. Wade was overturned in the United States this year. There's been a patchwork of laws being enacted at the state level to protect abortion rights. Obviously, we urge everyone who is listening to get involved in making sure that abortion rights are the law of the land in their state, because it's dangerous.
And not even in just America, but I think with Roe versus Wade, it set a precedent around the world, even in the UK, where we take for granted the fact that abortion rights have never been part of a political manifesto for a long time, because we just assume that it's a right. But when Roe versus Wade was overturned, that emboldened people to have that discussion again. So even if you're not in the US, even if you're in a so-called liberal country, you know, we as women, we still need to be cognizant of the fact that our rights are unfortunately not guaranteed. At least they won't be guaranteed until we have, you know, female dominated, you know, parliaments and, you know, senates and whatever.
Yeah. And to finish my earlier thoughts so people know where I was going to say that Roe v. Wade is dangerous not to have, because it's dangerous to women to not have abortion rights, because abortion is healthcare. Just wrapping up that complete thought. Okay, so our last one, male work ethic.
In memoriam.
In memoriam. They've given up.
We've recently done several bonus episodes on the decline of men in the workforce, but we are seeing just a general decline. It seems like the more women talk about the gender dynamics and relationships, the more it comes out that men genuinely believe that they are entitled to everything for nothing. You know, whether that's from their job, whether that's from society, whether that's from women. The general gist is that they genuinely feel aggrieved when you ask them to put in any ounce of effort, even if those efforts will actually benefit them as well. Yeah.
So RIP the male work ethic. It seems that they're just basically giving up.
It's had its heyday. It had its heyday back in the 1950s when men went to war or had to go to war. And now they don't. It's just, yeah.
All right. And now for a couple of FDS highlights. We had some big changes in the FDS sphere this year. So we obviously left Reddit, our hashtag Brexit.
The subreddit is no more.
I mean, the subreddit is minimally open, I guess. But it's we've moved operations over to the website and people are engaging on the website. So check it out, thefemaledatingsstrategy.com/forum. Don't regret leaving Reddit, by the way. Like, it's just kind of shit. I feel like there's a lot of people that are still mad about it, but I'm also like, I haven't seen anybody attempt to recreate what we did because it's very difficult.
It's very difficult, and it's just not worth all the hours and just knowing that anything you write belongs to Reddit and you can get banned at a moment's notice. It's just not really worth it. The website is a much better place for discussion. And it leads nicely into the next one highlight is the launch of the blog. You know, one of the things that makes FDS stand out from other, I guess, female-only spaces is the strategy and insight, you know, section. So when we had the subreddit, the mods got overwhelmed. I used to be a mod on it, and it didn't leave us enough time to actually write original content. And I know that made me quite sad because I like doing that. I like writing thoughtful think pieces. And even when you did write something insightful, you could just get trolled by angry scrotes or pick-me's if it made it into a certain subreddit or wherever. But on the website, we now have a functioning blog, and the blog posts that have been posted so far are just, yeah, it's OG FDS, and it's our space as well.
And then we can talk about our favorite episodes this year. So far, I really liked the Jana Matthews episode. Did you have a favorite episode? The one with Jana Matthews is the one we did on fraternities and sororities. Because we'd had a lot of people request more information or discussion about how to date on college, because dating during college is hard mode. So we brought her on, and I thought like she had done a lot of research and it was really good and informative.
Yeah.
What was your favorite episode?
That's a good question. I'd probably say the roast of Johnny Depp, the Brexit episode, because it was fun to get Tupac in there.
Tampon King.
Tampon. Oh my God. Yeah, actually that one. Like Lilith and Rose, a voice acting of Charles and Camilla was on point. I died. Yeah, Tampon King episode. And the Lindsay Bancroft episode as well. I know there was a lot of requests for that. And it was nice to have his insight into domestic violence and just, yeah, from somebody who actually works with perpetrators. So that was nice as well.
Yeah. So FDS podcast highlights. So we're really, really thankful and grateful for everyone who joined this year on any of our FDS platforms, whether it be our social media or on the website, or if you listen to the podcast, or if you're one of the YouTube listeners. So we have a little like YouTube crew. And if you're a hate listener, one of the Scrotes that are hate listening to us and are sending us questions on our Patreon. So every time you guys engage and obviously like support our Patreon, that money that we're using to build other aspects of the FDS brand. So thank you for your continued support. And we're really excited about 2023, right? So just expect to see a lot more stuff ramp up. So we're really poised to grow in the direction that we want to grow. So thank you for everyone's continued support. Any last words? Happy New Year. That's it. Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah, happy holidays, happy New Year. And we will see you in 2023 for even more trouble.
Even more partying and bullshitting, roasting, scalping, barbecuing, fricasseeing. So that's our show. Check us out on our website, thefemaledatingstrategy.com. Support us on our Patreon, patreon.com/thefemaledatingstrategy for weekly bonus content. Chat with us in the Discord. Send us a dating question or send us a scrote to roast on one of our future Roast Scrote episodes. Check us out on Twitter @fem.strat and Instagram @_thefemale dating strategy. Thanks for listening, all 2022 queens. And for all you scrotes out there, get humbled Kevin Samuel style.
Die mad.
Die mad.
Bye.